everyone. As I said, I'm Jon Maskrey. I'm a UX designer and web developer working in a product team. And I'm going to talk about, progressive web apps. So I'll go through what they are, why you'd want to bother developing with one, what you need to do to actually make them. We'll talk a bit about basic functionality. I'm going to keep it fairly high level because it gets very developer-y, and I know not everyone here is a developer. And go through some use cases of how you might use them and some examples. And then a tiny bit about the end about testing and measuring performance and how you know you built them correctly. So progressive web app. It's a bit of a mouthful, so I'm going to refer to them as PWAs from now on. Although it's a bit like www and World Wide Web, they're pretty long either way. They're basically a user experience that combines native app-like features with the universal nature of a website, or in a sort of less pompous way. They're kind of normal websites with app-like superpowers. The P obviously is progressive web apps, and that's progressive enhancement. So here's a quote from an American stand-up that I've actually never heard of, but someone else mentioned this in another talk. An escalator can never break, it can only become stairs. You never see an escalator temporarily out of order sign, just escalator temporarily stairs. Sorry for the convenience, we apologize for the fact you can still get up there. And that's the kind of idea behind this sort of progressive enhancement. It's a set of stairs progressively enhanced with a bit of electricity and some motors and moving parts. If electricity gets cut off, they still work. So that's the progressive aspect of a PWA. And they're reliable. The idea behind them is they can work offline, and they can work when you've got a dodgy network, going through tunnels, crap 3G, something like that. So you shouldn't get any more of the fun dinosaur game. As everyone noticed on Chrome, you can play the dinosaur game when it goes down. It's brilliant. They're app-like, so they provide an immersive app-like user experience. So you can do things like install on the home screen, you can style up your loading screen, and you can make it look less like a browser, so it looks more like an app by hiding the bar at the top. And you can do things like display notifications. So this is one I've just installed. Got the loading screen there, and it doesn't look like it's now in a browser. They're discoverable. They're just websites. So you can share your links out, you can find them on Google or whatever other search engine there now is. I don't think there are any others. They're secure. They have to use HTTPS. And I'll talk a bit more about that later, but it is a requirement of a progressive web app. So why would you build one in the first place? So let's have a look at some of the pros of PWAs. So as I said before, they're progressive. So if your browser doesn't deal with them properly and doesn't understand them, they'll still work. They're cheaper to maintain. It's a web app. It's HTML, it's JavaScript, it's CSS, it's all that sort of thing. So you don't need to build a separate, iOS app or something like that. And so you don't need to hire separate developers. You don't actually need to install them, although part of the good thing about a PWA is you can install it. You can just use it like a website. You don't need to download it or do anything with it at all. It will still work. And they're easy to find and share. As I said before, it's a link, it's a website, so you don't need to submit it to an app store and have Apple approve it or anything like that. But, it's a relatively new technology, and some of the more cool aspects of it are only just sort of out in the latest browsers. There's not the widest of browser support, but again, if you build it progressively, it shouldn't matter too much. Yeah, you don't get the same in-deep sort of hardware access to certain things like you do with a native app. So you can't access your contacts and things like that. So it will depend if you want to build on what you actually want to do. And yeah, one of the cons is they're not, I don't know if I've said it before, but yeah, you can't get them in app stores. So that could be a source of traffic to your app, is the app store, and they're not in there. And sorry for anyone who's on Apple platform at the moment, Android is light years ahead with progressive web apps, which is weird because I think it was Apple originally started messing about with this technology like 10 years ago before they did all the App Store stuff. And yeah, iOS really only has very basic support from about it's iOS 11.3, and it's still, there are issues with it, so there are workarounds you have to do for iOS. Could be something to do with the revenue from their App Store. I don't know, couldn't possibly comment on that. So what do you need to do to actually make a PWA? Well, as I said before, they're a combination of existing web technologies, so it could be something in Consensus, it could be something you build with React or Vue.js, .NET, it could be PHP, doesn't matter. What you need is a service worker and a web app manifest. So let's have a look at service worker first. And it's essentially the service worker's JavaScript that doesn't deal with the actual web page itself. So it sits outside of the web page. It doesn't do any fancy stuff like render things differently or like have flashy effects. But it's like a little friendly sort of helper that does things in the background. It's quite easy to register it. There's not a lot of code to actually tell the page, oh, we're going to use a service worker. Just that amount there. And with that, you can load it in after everything else is loaded, so you're not sort of blocking any rendering of the page. And the second part is the web app manifest. So this is a JSON file, and it's not easy to read on there, but it's quite a simple one. All it does is sort of, you can tell the browser what your app's called. You can put icons on it for when it's on the home screen of your phone. You can tell it to be full screen without browser Chrome, set the background and things like that. And again, it's just a link in the actual HTML. So it is fairly simple to add in there. Right, let's talk a bit about functionality. So, as I mentioned before, there are service workers, a bit of JavaScript that sits outside of the normal sort of page control stuff. And it does things like handle network requests, it manages your cache, you can send push notifications with it, and you can synchronize stuff in the background. So, let's have a look at the HTTPS side of it. As I said before, it has to be secure. The service worker is actually, it's like a little proxy server in between your web page and your network. And so your web page will say, oh, can you do something? And it'll be intercepted by the service worker, which will then communicate with the network or the cache or whatever. So you have to have it under HTTPS to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. It's really useful for managing cache. And this, it does sound a bit dry and a bit boring, but you can do some really cool things with this to actually make your application really fast. For those non-developers, a cache is just a store of files that you take from the internet and store locally on the computer. And it means they're really fast to get hold of, so you don't have to make a network connection and grab it back and everything like that. So when you visit a site, your browser will cache a load of files and then reuse them without having to go back to the network. So let's have a look at some of those caching strategies. So normally, you get a web page and it goes straight to the network and grab its resources and bring it back. But in the network first caching strategy, the web page will ask the service worker to go and get it something. So it may be, I don't know, a cat GIF, whatever you usually get on the internet. So the web page will go, service worker, can you get me the cat GIF? And the service worker will go, yep, I'll just have a look. Yep, here it is on the internet. I'll bring that back to you. And if there's a problem with that, it can then fall back and have a look at its cache. So it goes to the network, we're in a tunnel or something, can't get it back, but I've got it locally, here you go. And that's good for when you've got stuff that changes frequently, but it is, you've got to watch out, because if you're on a slow connection or something that cuts out, when it goes to the network, it has to wait for it to fail. So it'd be like, network, can you give me the cat GIF? Network, and maybe shouting network for a while, and then go, sod it, it's in the cache. So it's not the ideal one for all situations. And the opposite of that is the cache first. So again, web page goes, service worker, send me the cat GIF, and it goes, got it already, it's in my pocket, here it is straight away, there you go. If it isn't, it can go, hang on, I'll just pop to the network and get it, here you go, and then it'll stick it back in the cache for next time. So you just get a bit more control with that. So yeah, that's good for building offline first. So static files like CSS, JavaScript, if you do it cache first, and when it installs, it sticks it all in its cache, you know it's going to be fast. This one sounds funny, but it's quite clever. So it's stale while revalidating. So what it does, it grabs, web page will say, cat GIF, send it over. Service worker will go, it's in the cache, here it is. But then in the background, it'll go back to the network and say, is there an updated version of that? There is. I'll bring it back and put it in cache for next time. And so that's good for frequently updating content, so you don't need to keep having the very latest thing displayed. But it does download content each time, so it'll download it twice if it needs to. And there's a slightly different version of that for the last one. So this is stale while revalidate, then it updates. So it does the same thing. It'll go, here it is from the cache. Go to the network, I've got an updated one, put it back in the cache. But then it can send a message back to the browser saying, actually, we've got an updated cat GIF for you here. Pretty important, you need to see it. And you can then do some extra code in JavaScript on the page to actually notify the user that new content is available, hit here to refresh. Or you could just change the content without any user interaction at all. It depends on the situation. You could change it and things jump around a bit if it's a certain type of information, but it's a really useful feature. You can also pre-cache stuff. So when you first go to the web page or the web app that's got a service worker, the service worker will automatically get registered and installed. And at that point, you can say, I know you're going to be using something else, so we'll send you these files that I know you're going to need later. So we'll send you some CSS, some JavaScript. You're probably going to go to our About Us page next. So we'll send you that as well, so the whole page is then in the cache, and it's lightning quick when you hit About Us. You could do stuff like, if you've got a login page, you could put a really lightweight login page in, so if you've got to log into your app. And it's only got CSS and JavaScript just for that one page. And as the user's filling in their username and password, you can pre-cache the next 3 pages that you know they're going to be going to. So it becomes a really fast, behind-the-scenes sort of way of doing stuff that the user has no idea about, but it's really fast. And yeah, as I said before, you don't get the runny dinosaur if you do it properly. So you can set up offline pages, so you can give a message to the users saying, actually, you're offline, you've not got connection at the moment. And you can then pre-cache those pages so they're always there for the user. So they can also deliver notifications to your phone. So you'll have seen them for normal apps on your phone, and you may have seen them on desktop as well. They kind of look like this. You get the little badges, and you get the little ones with the icons and a bit more detail. And there's 2 components to these. It's the push and the notification API. And it is a bit crazy. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of this, because The amount of code and different things you have to do is massive for these. They are complicated. So breaking it down, you actually, on the user's device, you've got to get permission. Part of the API is to have a permission from the user. They've got to interact and say, yes, I allow you to send me messages. On a desktop, you may visit blogs. I don't know if you've seen them, and you get little notifications saying, allow notifications. Usually you go no or block, because you probably don't want the blog to keep sending you stuff. But for apps and things like that, it's quite useful. And once you've got that permission, it gets changed into a push subscription, which is essentially something to identify that person and that device. So it's an ID for that device. And then you send that over to your server. Once it's on your server and you want to send a message, you compile your message and get it ready. And then you send that to a push service, which will then send it out to the user's device. And once it's on the device, the service worker, little friendly one, wakes up in the background and shows you the message. So even if you've got your browser closed, the service worker will be asleep on your device, and it'll wake up and go, you got a message, here it is. So let's have a quick look at the kind of things you can do with a message. Here's a more fully formed one. So you've got things like you can have the title on there. You've got your body text, an icon. And you can send images as well, so you can make them look nice. And you've also got an action section at the bottom. So you can have an action image and an action title. That could be just a link to if you're saying I've got a new article for you to read. Or it could be a notification, I don't know if something's available to download, and that could be the download link. So there's lots of things you can play about with that. Onto background sync. Okay, so let's say you're filling out a form. What usually happens is that form, when you hit send, it gets sent to the server, and everyone's happy. But what happens if you do go through that tunnel? You're on a 3G connection, you go through the tunnel, you hit send, no, what's going on? You come out the other end and it's like, no, it is the dinosaur again, oh God. Best case scenario, you hit the back button and your form's still filled in and you go send and it works. Worst case scenario is you go back and you've got to fill out your form again and it took you 12 minutes or something and no one's happy with that. So let's get our little service worker back to help us. So instead of sending that out straight to the server, we'll let our service worker deal with it. And the service worker can then send it to the server. Then if you go through the tunnel and it's like, no, it doesn't matter. Service worker's got that, and it's just like, I'll keep hold of that, and I'll send it when there's connection. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. Just leave it with me. So you can get on with doing whatever you want. And when the network connection comes back, in the background, it'll synchronize and send that message out to the server. Right, let's have a look at some examples. This is the dangerous bit for me. I'm worried about this section. I'm going to go for a live demo. So, if you can visit this link, but don't click through to anything through there. It's not the greatest of URLs. But it's a demo site I've put together with consensus and content types. And it's just to make it a bit more robust. So it's not an all bells and whistles app. It's just a very simple way of doing things. So view the page, don't click through on anything. And then if you stick your phones in airplane mode and have a click through, and if you've got a compatible browser, it should work, and you should still be able to click through because I've pre-cached a few of the articles. Is that link actually working? Brilliant. So you can have a scroll through, then turn airplane mode on, and you should be able to get through to the first, I think, 4 articles on there. It is a demo site, so it's not real. I've just stolen some content from our Zengenti blog. And if you then scroll to the bottom and click through, you should get an offline page. So that's just an example of making something a bit more robust. Has it worked for everyone? Yeah, brilliant. So we'll have a look at a couple of more extreme examples. So Instagram.com, if you go there on your phone, it's a progressive web app. So you can log in and you can see on here straight away they give you bang, turn on notifications, because obviously it's going to be useful for you to do that. And then, yeah, it's on the web, but yeah, it's very, very much like the actual app. And it's much more lightweight and quicker to use. So if you've got a slow phone or not much storage space, yeah, try using that. And Twitter have done the same thing. So if you go to mobile.twitter.com, again, that's a PWA. And they don't really bombard you with notifications on this one to turn on notifications. It's in the actual configuration tab of that. When you scroll through it, it will actually, between tweets, you'll get, oh, do you want to turn on your notifications? It's quite subtle. But again, I think that one's built with React. And yeah, it just shows you how you can build quite an immersive experience on the web and make it very app-like. Could have things like reporting a pothole. So this is a use case. So you're driving along, you swerve to miss the mother of all potholes. Your passenger's with you, because obviously you don't want to be using the phone while you're driving. And they can just about get through on their flaky 4G connection. They'll go to the report a pothole page of the local council site. They don't know it, but yep, it's a PWA. Right? It's pre-cached all resources while it can. So it's got a bit of 4G, and yep, it's downloaded everything. Passenger fills in the details, gets the geolocation, and everything goes, there's a massive pothole here. Hit send, but there's no network, but it doesn't matter. So the details of the pothole are sent in the background by the service worker when the passenger next has their network. So that's just a little example of what you could use it for. Okay, so you've built one. How do you know you've done it right? So we'll have a look at testing and measuring performance. And this time it's Google to the rescue. They've got a product called Lighthouse, which is actually built into the Chrome browser. And it's useful for all websites, not just PWAs, because it'll give you reports on sort of general performance. And it's not only reports saying that you're too slow or oh, you're all right, it'll tell you how to fix your problems too. And to get to it, just right-click on the web page when you're in Chrome, go to Inspect, and then, if you can see it up there, shift it along to the Audit tab. And there you can just go Run Audit, and it will do a load of tests on that web page. And once that's done, it will bring you back a nice report with hopefully lots of green and numbers in the 100. There we go. So, yeah, you can't really see it up there, but it's got performance, and it says it's like 100 out of 100 for that one. And PWA-ness, it gives you a whole checklist of things you have to do to actually get a good score on that. Hopefully you'll see these better a bit. So yeah, across the top you've got performance, progressive web app. It does accessibility checks, checks for best practices as well, and SEO. And it measures stuff like the first meaningful paint, so how long it takes to actually get your content visible, and gives you a score for your general speed. And it gives you a checklist for progressive web apps. So I can barely read it from here, so I'll read it out. So does your page load fast enough on 3G? Does it respond with a 200 when offline? Does it prompt you to actually install it? Does it use HTTPS and so on like that? So it'll give you a nice checklist, and for a proper PWA, you need all those ticked basically. So to summarize, PWAs, they're websites with app-like powers. So nothing particularly special about them, they're just enhanced. They use a service worker and a web app manifest to deal with that. and they control the network activity and cache, notifications, background sync, and there'll be much more as well, because it's still a relatively young feature, really, so more and more things are going into it. They can be really simple. You can, like the demo site I put together, that's just something I tacked on to an existing site. You don't need to build an app from scratch. You can just make your existing site more robust with 2 files and a bit of code. So they can be simple, or you can build a whole app like Twitter. And yeah, use Google's Lighthouse tool to test the performance and to test you built them correctly. And it's just a great tool for anyone wanting to check out their website and how well it's performing anyway. Thank you very much. Here's some links if you want to have a look at that and do some further reading. And there's one at the bottom on what you can do with iOS, because there are some workarounds for its features that aren't there yet. Thank you very much.